Très bien, Interglops. And, well, let's continue with part 3 of Let's Read FreeRIDErs Free Ride. The last time we left off, Ryan had been visited in his dreams by a sphinx named Quinoa, who is believed to be a creature known as an integrate that previously was kind of like a cryptid, you know, like Slender Man or Bigfoot. Ryan didn't believe in them, but he kind of does now. Not only that, but the Nexus Internal Revenue seemed to be hiding something. And if that wasn't bad enough, we don't even have Ryan to figure this out, because Ryan doesn't exist anymore. Why? Because Rihanna exists now. After realizing there was no way out, no way to survive this with otherwise, Ryan and Kaylee fused up in active mode, which has left Ryan female for the rest of his life, pretty much. Well, he can switch back after 3 years, but spoiler alert, he's not going to. She's not going to. Rihanna it is, then. You fantasized about this. Not like you think, Kaylee reassured. This isn't the first time I've fused, you know? I've just missed this. Oh, so much. And you've never done this before. You've built up some bad habits. So just focus on what you're doing, Rihanna. I'm here. I'm active. I'm ready. True partners now. Well, I'm gonna try to burn through as much of this as possible, so hopefully we can see how this story ends, and whether or not sacrificing her gender was worth it. For Ryan, I mean. Okay, let's continue. Rihanna hadn't looked outside in the 63 hours since starting on the subsystems. Before stepping out, she tapped into its external sensors on the hunch that they were actually in working order and not disabled by the soldiers. One by one, they flickered on. Out of reflex, she started to reach for one, but the view from the cargo camera door appeared. Thanks, Kaylee. Bad habits, remember? You don't need to do this manually. Just think of what you want to do, instead of how you want to do it, and I'll take care of the nuts and bolts. It's what I do, the link said. The new cross-rider flicked between views, fore and aft, port and starboard. A military-grade hard light shield covered the cave north, and its grid lines occasionally visible, shimmering in the 80-degree air outside. Oh my. 80 degrees, I believe that's actually Celsius, not Fahrenheit, so it's pretty hot out there. In front, the pack was still hard at work removing the AN-225's heavy lifters. Rihanna took a few seconds to admire their efficiency. Rumor had it they could strip most any craft of every useful component and piece of scrap within a couple hours. They were as good at taking things apart as she was putting them back together. The timer said they'd only been working for 30 minutes and already had 6 of the engine nacelles in the hold. She shut off the video and Rufio went outside. They were about to use the grav crane to get the 4 remaining units into the fuselage. The information Quinoa had given her had Officer Milo Wilson's location. The platoon had set up a climate-controlled shelter inside the cave mouth for the material recovery officers. The Nexus military sub had been moved and now blocked the entrance. Pulse gun turrets extended. The craft itself had a vague sauropod appearance, if one had been compressed into a football shape. By contrast, the pack's salvage sub was a bird of prey, sleek and powerful. With the backpack's additional lifters, Rihanna could have recovered the distance in a single bound, but decided it was a poor idea that would probably get her knocked out of the air by some overzealous Saurian soldier. A few short jumps wouldn't cause a ruckus. Mila had the door open before she was within 10 meters, connecting a secure laser link when they got close enough. Kaylee updated Wilson's mecha in milliseconds, and they both learned something new about one another. Hello, Miss Stonegate. I'm Sophie, the Phoenix sent. Sorry for not speaking earlier, but we're normally not allowed to speak directly to civvies. It's SOP. I can override them in special circumstances, Mila added hurriedly. Like now. Can't believe Quinoa got all the way out here. That cargo flyer belongs to her uncle, Joe Steeder. Last comm I received, I was told he's doing this in return for a reduced sentence. She snorted defensively. If I had my druthers, I'd bring Quinoa home with us, but I doubt I can make her do anything. She stood right here in front of us. Sophie and I couldn't even move. Well, she wants you to come with us. Otherwise, she would have handed all the information to us. Kaylee added. From the time code, it looks like she was hacking you while talking with Wilson here. The Nexus officer hesitated. Leaving the site of a battle? Milet, darling, we're escorting civilians in the battle site to keep them safe. These are standing orders, love. Let's get out of Thompson's scales. The ground shook. There was an explosion outside. Then came the whine of military-grade pulse cannons. Shit! Out of time! Go back! Back to the sub! All civilians find shelter! The Dragon commander shouted via laser link. Find shelter now! Wilson, Burke, keep them covered. As Mila and Rihanna kept towards the open pack suborbital's door, the grav crane dropped the AN-225 to an incredible clatter. There was no time to chat, they just had to act on instinct. On entering, she connected the other rides with Quinoa's information and let them absorb it. The sound of battle outside the cave grew louder. Are you going to stand there like a smug kitty or tell us how we're supposed to get out of here? Kixie fumed. Rihanna gestured at the replica 20th century aircraft outside. Fly through that. Look at the specs, Quixie. You know them as well as I do. Except for the lifters, all that's there is basic aluminum, barely even thicker than cardboard. Steeder Enterprises loves twin sin nostalgia, and it was cheap to fab. Pump up the re-entry fields on your sub here, and we can go through it without a scratch. The she-wolf smacked her low forehead. Oh, you're right. She turned to her avian-suited pilot. How fast can you get us out of here, Lex? Until now, Kaylee had never heard the bird speak. Avian rides had a more extreme effect on physiology on first views than mammalian ones. Lex probably sported a beak under the helmet. Right now, Alpha, the bird person said in a rather androgynous voice. Engines are on hot standby, putting up shields, inertial dampeners on full. Let's hike this football. Hut, hut! Hut, hut! The wolves echoed as they took their seats, everyone else just grabbing something. The craft's hard light shields, honed to a fine edge, threaded through the aircraft as if it were foil. Quixie whined a little, knowing there was 200,000 moo she was leaving behind. But the heavy lifters were secure in the salvage hold. The sub's lidar blazed ahead, showing the cave route in a holographic display. Radar was as useless here as anything else radio-based. Anybody coming after us? Quixie asked Shadow. We're fine, the other she-wolf said. They're preoccupied. I think we've got it way clean for now. But no matter how things go back there, someone will eventually follow us. Better fly. The dominant force in the dry ocean were strong, sand-blasting winds. They had millions of years to carve these caves. There were no signs of water here, only smooth edges. They covered kilometer after kilometer of winding tunnels. Feels like we're inside of a French horn, Lex said. Are we really sure this information is trustworthy? I mean, we're not headed into a dead end, are we? No, you're doing just fine, came Quinoa's Steeder's voice from the flight deck speakers. But if you can speed things up a little, we all breathe a little easier. Falcon Rider looked into a camera. I'm not a bat girly. I'm doing the best I can. She's got to be really close, Kaylee added. Like, really close. Really, really, Quinoa said. This time they didn't sound like it came from the speakers. The human-sized integrated sphinx decloaked at the flight deck doorway. She raised her hand and waved. Hello, everyone. I'll be your tour guide to the Great Egress. It's going to be a tight fit for this little sub of yours, and sorry I didn't announce myself earlier. Figured it was easier to beg pardon than ask permission and stow away. Officer Wilson and gasped and took the surprisingly human-sized sphinx in a friendly hug. Unbelievable, she exclaimed. It really is you, Quinny. It is. Tis, she said, returning the much taller duo of user duo's embrace. Compared to everyone else, he was really short and fragile looking. All integrated, Cora and me. Now that I've had a little bit of time to adapt, I feel better about it. I kind of miss being 7 feet tall, though. The fused were all looking at her with a mix of wonder and horror. The Sphinx spread her iridescent wings to make herself look bigger. What? No, I'm short. You lose a lot of mass. It's a funky process. Just stay away from me, Burke rumbled from the crew deck. Flint and I don't want to catch whatever you've got. We like each other separate. Later, Burke, Wilson reproved. Does this mean you're coming home to Nexus with us? Sorry, but no. I'm just being a gracious hostess by seeing my unexpected guests out the back door, Quinoa said. Just like in the dream, her only clothing was a blue bikini. The hard-light emitters in her body pulsed faintly, swirling across a rainbow. She coughed and apparently realizing she said more than what intended. Yes, I live here in these caves. Which means there's more to them than bare rock, Rihanna said. Oh, look, we're almost to the Great Egress, the Sphinx said. I'll be going now. Oh, foobar. What the hell is that? No, anyone but him. How did he even know? Everyone was too focused on Quinoa to notice who stood guard the exit. The hollow screen focused on each ride in turn. In the center of the group, above about 20, some fused, mostly not, stood a huge sand-colored wolf. Go no further, he commanded. It was none other than Alpha Wolf himself. Open your cargo hatch and release the Sophahons you have in your hold. Dragons, griffins, whatever they are, we won't allow you to take them into bondage. Let my people go. So saith me. That piece of dog shit's really full of himself, Quixie said. There was an undertone to her voice. Her own bride agreed with her, and they were wolves. Also, he wasn't there, Alpha. The sub's shields came up. I really should have some weapon on this thing. Stupid cheapskate me. Prepare for boarders. If you don't have a gun, grab one. How the hell did he find out about this anyway? How? There was a mad scramble for the airlock and salvage hold. Alpha Wolf howled challenge, echoed by the motley crew of armed rides on either side. Bears, big cats, a bull with pulse cannons rigged to his back. They were all metallic Nexus units, with as many weapons as possible attached. Alpha Wolf himself had no weapon except his voice. He hardly needed anything else. Shoot it down, rip open the doors. Freedom rides with us. Angered, fuming, and growling, Quinoa snarled. You will not do this in my home, she shouted through the external speakers. Her voice had harmonics that made the entire rebel group stop in their tracks. She extended her arm forward, palm down, as she raised it up. The lifters on the suborbital started an unhealthy humming. The hard light emitters on her skin blazed, turning the inside of the flight deck blue. A giant hard light sledgehammer appeared in the air in front of the sub. Get bent, you stupid mutt. Back off right now, I'm warning you. She's bending the lifter grab fields. Hell if I know how, Lix exclaimed. The fused Falcon mech had already started to back off the exit a little. He didn't touch any controls, but he didn't really have to. The Birdman was linked directly to the suborbital's helm. The craft lurched backwards, its shields coming down. Draining power? How the hell? She's not connected to anything! With the sub-shield down, the rebel rides advanced. Despite the power of the Integrate's voice, the Sphinx dropped the hammer, slamming it down with a hand gesture. The cave mouth immediately collapsed. Lex smartly moving the craft backwards for getting full power. Quinoa collapsed. What was that? Some kind of lifter kinesis? Rufia asked. Yvonne had a medical module, but Quinoa had nobody to unfuse with. The Sphinx occupied a tiny part of a ride-sized medical bag in the salvage hold. Quinoa had an ink-shaped crystal necklace plugged into a very non-standard port in the back of her neck. In fact, she didn't have any other ports of a non-biological nature. She didn't even have a power connector. Apparently, she used induction to recharge her depleting energy. Rufia had bought every single induction charger aboard the ship she could find. Whatever she did drained her to almost nil. She's looking better already. Hell if I know how her metabolism works. Quinoa groaned, eyes half-lidded. She reached for the necklace that had been removed. Rufia had said it wasn't anything special, just standard laser comm gear and funny configuration. Not finding it where expected, The Sphinx gasped and sat up as fast as her drained batteries would let her. "My necklace! I need my din!" she said with an edge of desperation to her voice. "Here you go," Rihanna said, hopefully plugging it back in. "Running diagnostic. If you screw with this, Rufia, dear, Rihanna, honey, I'm going to be quite cross with you." The integrated Sphinx woman said. "We didn't touch it. I was just making sure you were okay, but I couldn't connect with your systems," Rihanna said. "All Kaylee and I got for 2 minutes was a blast of corrupted data." "That's not corrupted data, thank you. That's my brainwaves you're talking about," Quinoa said testily. "I'm not standardized anymore." "So I guess that's why you need that, then?" Rufius asked, pointing at the necklace the young woman was clutching to her chest like a security blanket. "Off-the-shelf gear for the most part. There's just a tiny module where that special connector is. Why is that?" "So I guess you folks want to know how you're going to get out of here now," Quinoa said, deftly changing the subject. "Well, there's only one way to go right now. My home. It's on the other side, out. And there's another way out through the enclave, and boy, are they going to be pissed at me for bringing you meat and mech in." "Meat?" Pixie asked. Of the 8 fused in the room, she was the most dumbstruck. The Steeder Colonization Consortium had originally helped bankroll the colony's founding, along with the Xeris Diaspora Group. Well over 150 years before. The family had expanded a lot since landing, but anyone connected with the name had some degree of celebrity. Quinoa had a larger measure than most, since her uncle ran Steeder Entertainment and had treated her like his heir apparent. Rihanna again remembered rides based on mythical creatures were growing explosively in popularity among the wealthy. It was against the law to create an RI based on humans. Quinoa's Sphinx had created an uproar with its near-human face. A mere 3 weeks later, and she vanished. Is that what we are?" the she-wolf asked. "Should I be insulted?" "Just, slang," the integrate woman stammered. "Look, I'm gonna have to take total control of your sub. I don't want you knowing my home's exact location. There's a lot of tight spots you don't know about. We're certainly not going back the other way." She looked around and found that the interior of the salvage deck. The lights flickered. The window shutters closed, and then began moving. "Sit here. So everyone sit tight, okay?" "I don't appreciate being hijacked," Quixie growled. "But she's all yours. I hope you're on the up and up here." "Hey, didn't I get you to the exit? We just had company I didn't expect." Quinoa climbed the ladder to the crew deck. "Just sit tight, it'll be a while, so make yourselves at home. So make yourselves comfortable." "She's got a point," Rufia said, shrugging. "I'm hungry. How about you girls?" "Famished," Rihanna heard her say. She looked at her hands, her chest. "Maybe I should defuse." "Nah, stay that way," Rufia said, the tall she-elk patting her on the shoulder. Rihanna Fuse was only relatively shorter compared to the other fused mechs, only 6 feet tall. "You won't be able to stop staring at yourself if you do. Trust me, I know from experience." "Trust me, you have nice curves," Kaylee added. "It can wait until we're back at the garage. Shelly's gonna take us shopping, Ugh, maybe we should check you into a hotel instead." "Oh, yeah." Shelly is basically Rihanna's partner in crime, so to speak, other than Kaylee. Her full name is Rochelle Seaford, and we're going to be learning a lot more about her when we get to Merging Traffic. Basically, Rihanna does hardware, Rochelle does software, and that's the way they like it. Now let's continue the story. "Can anyone tell if we're even moving?" Shadow asked. The fused wolf woman had taken to bouncing a hard rubber ball off the walls with a regular thok 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 sound. Trying increasingly complex bounces around the mess area, she looked at her 3 other packmates. The sub's windows were shuttered tight. "Anyone? Quixie? Tonya? Michelle? My inertial guidance is farked up." "I can't even log into the sub's computer," Kaylee said. "That girl's completely locked it out." The link shifted uncomfortably. Her internal chronometer was off. Quinoa had sent some kind of signal that had scrambled everyone's internal chronos. Nobody was quite sure how much time had passed. For all we know, we're on top of Old Smoky. I'm gonna go check the flight deck again. You do that, Miss Kitty, Kixie said irritably. Her attitude towards Rihanna had cooled down somewhat. Everyone was in a sour mood. Rihanna, I know you've just joined my team and all, but could you quit eating me out of house and home? You've consumed roughly 5,000 calories, Kaylee informed. A helpful body status screen flicked up on. Don't worry about your girlish figure, though. That's mainly finishing off your organ systems by my fusers. Endocrine system, hormonal balance nominal. You're a healthy woman now. A good job, if I do say so myself. I think you'll be pleased once we defused. Nobody dared defused. At the mess table, Rufia was playing Lex and Michelle at a game of fuser strip poker. In this version, each time somebody lost, they had to turn off part of their hardlight skin. The she-elk had so far only lost her left forearm, while the other two were almost down to the metal. Yeah, with Rufia, that doesn't surprise me. On the flight deck, Quinoa sat in a lotus position, hovering a few centimeters above the floor using her presumably built-in lifters. The lights were all out, the wind-delayed shield shutter. Even the hard light control panels were shut off. The Sphinx's necklace, a din, as she called it, was flashing steadily, connected directly via laser transceivers to the suborbital salvage spacecraft. Standing next to her like it was old hat, Officer Wilson stood watch, nodding at Rihanna and Kaylee as the Lynx walked in. Has she said anything? Not a word, Rihanna. Not a word, Rihanna, now, right? The next disrevenuer said. I'm sorry you had to take that step and ended up not really needing it. I know how hard it is. I've met a lot of cross-riders in my line of work, and I know it's not all fun and games, changing teams. The fused Lynx nodded. I've been partner for Kaylee for about 5 years now. I didn't even know she was female when I bought her. But I wasn't gonna just sell her to someone else. I suppose it had to happen sooner or later. Rihanna brought me back from the dead, Kaylee added, still gushing with gratitude. After the RMRS and Army used me for parts and shoved me in the shed for 30 years. 30 years. There's no way I could pair with anyone else. Going passive every time we fused was a small price to pay. I hated it. Still willing. Still am if she wants to change back in a few years. And I grew rather attached to her myself, Rihanna added. Even more so now. I suppose I could have prepared with another ride at the same time, but it just didn't feel right. The duo looked at how Mila stood watch over Quinoa. You two know each other well? I was her bodyguard for 2 years before I joined the service. She was just a child, Mila said, resisting the urge to pet her former charge atop her head. She was a good kid. The 20 months fused to a pastel blue Pegasus was a little too much. Even only 10 hours a day. The RI and I had never got on well. A brassive little filly. They had you in one of those babysitter specials? Rihanna mused. Oddball little line. That. The ride works only made them for a couple of years before they backed off on over-specialized sublines and went more generic. I can't imagine it was fun cramming you into one of those, going around on all fours most of the time. I still had back problems that needed nanosurgery to fix about once per month, Mila said. I was good at my job, but Quinoa saw how unhappy I was. She learned I wanted to join the service, then shuffled some money into the table so I could go ahead and do it. I'm still grateful. I got a message from her a few weeks that she was okay. Impossible to track down, of course, but well, here we are and here she is. I can hear every word you're saying. I loved that show, the Sphinx said, opening her eyes. The lights in the deck came back on. Quinoa stood up. I thought you made a good dashie, Mila, but well, I'm glad you found a job you like. What happens now? Are we out? Quinoa gritted her teeth. Unfortunately, no, we're not out. I have friends who want to chat with y'all first. Time to go outside. The sub's inside speakers came on. Get your things, everyone. You're the first meat allowed to see this place uninvited. The Enclave Council wants a chat. They're not happy with me or you, but especially me. As for what's outside, well, the young woman broke into song in a man's voice. Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with the spin, traveling in the world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. Yeah, so basically they're far underground of sorts. Hollow Earth theory is real in this universe, though I guess it's HawlSera's theory. As she sang, the port and starboard hatches opened, spilling in late afternoon sunlight. Quixie's unnamed subordinate sat in a forest clearing, the thick growth just beyond the landing pad tangled and ancient. The plant life looked like someone had taken native Gondwana and Terran types that were broadly similar, combined their genes like they were so many Lego bricks. The clearing wasn't empty either. Standing on the ground or hovering above it were almost 24 integrated people. There were some common types, but 3 stood out: a griffin, a pegasus, a horse-headed centaur, and the mother of them all, a feathered Aliosaurus. Rihanna floated down to the ground with the rest of the crew and Nexus officers. First she thought they truly were outdoors, but Kaylee's sensors reported otherwise. The sky above them was actually a video coding on the cave ceiling. The lead left the truth through the size of the cave itself. It was still 2 kilometers across. The 2 officers stay in the sub, the barn owl declared. We'll assign a guard to them. Everyone else follow the dinosaur. We've got some accommodations for you. Once you get inside the welcome mat, defuse and let your partners rest a while. We'll make sure you're fed and comfortable. We won't keep you long. This isn't a prison. Rufia once more put her hand on Rufia's back. Looks like it'll be sooner rather than later. You up for this? I'm not really thinking about that right now. The Lynx marveled at the scenery above, of and around them. How did they build all of this? What did they build it with? She said to Kaylee. Genetics don't work like that, she said aloud, zooming in on a massive neon blue blossom. It does if you have a green thumb, the dinosaur above her said above her. It's a little more difficult than taking 2 seeds and mashing them together, though. Look more closely. The Tsar picked up one of the flowers and gave it to the Lynx. She squeezed the plant between the thumb and forefinger. Analytic tools worked on the genetics and chemical makeup. The results shocked Kaylee and Rihanna alike. It's all techno-organic? Always has been. I couldn't resist, I'm sorry. No, but what he really said, it's a hobby, the dinosaur said. I'm more of a Gardenosaurus, I suppose. I take plant A, plant B, mix them up, and get something new with my own nano. So yeah, I guess it really is that easy on the face of it. They're beautiful, Rihanna replied sincerely. What's a girl supposed to say when some guy gives her flowers? Thanks? Tasty, too. Welcome to my home, Wonkaville. Okay, that explains Quinoa's song, the Allosaurus said. My place is a sort of the official entry spots for noobs here at the Enclave. Everyone has a different name, mind you. Shangri-La, Westerosis, Tyria, everything from classical and ancient myths to the late 20th century revival. Literature to the 20th century revival. Quinoa's uncle's responsible for. I don't think there's any more than a handful of names, fewer than 400 years old. But where are my manners? I'm Colonel Edward Gray. Retired, of course, though not by choice. Formerly of Nouveau San Antonio. There was a pretty big upset in your military a year ago, wasn't there? Blame me for that. Tested a new dinosaur at RIDE. Don't know what happened, but we integrated within a week. I'm actually smaller now than I was, believe it or not. The dinosaur shrugged. Unlike many of the others who had hard-light lenses, the blue and white feathered carnosaur was covered in faintly glowing lines that were swooping curves, elaborate curls, like some kind of tribal tattoo. The hard part was sneaking me past the guards, but see, I learned a trick from my new friends who busted me out. It completely vanished, leaving only a sense that there was something very big, very close, then reappeared a few months later. I'm still almost 4 meters long. Took some tiptoeing around. Colonel Gray lifted his taloned 3-toed feet with exaggerated care. It looked like his arms were mostly human. He had enough fingers to carry a rake. Nice to meet everyone. Make yourselves at home. Eat, recharge. The council wants to hear how you ended up with us. This is about as formal as things get around here. I may have to actually materialize some clothes. Perish the thought. Rufia added dryly, walking next to Rihanna like it was old times aboard the Starliner, on the prowl for potential dates. Still never thought I'd see one of you big dinos up close. What big teeth you have, and that tail, what do you do with it? Mostly avoid hitting people. Fortunately, there's no doors for it to get stuck, and it only rains when I want to. Ah, here we are. The welcome mat was a large round tent that floated over the ground on lifters. It didn't seem to have been built with privacy in mind, with individual guest spaces completely open to one another. There were a dozen of them. It didn't take long for her to remember that there are other ways of getting some privacy, and they confirmed when Rihanna saw the hard light controls on the desk next to the bed, shown on the hard light walls in translucent mode, leaving an open door. This place is weird. Rufia and her ride separated and stayed with her. Do you want me and Yvonne here when you defuse, or do you want to be by yourself? I don't know, Rihanna. After all we've been through with her, Kaylee pointed out. After all the arguments we've ever had over this, we're still friends. Rihanna sent back. Their friendship had changed somewhat, but Rufia had never, ever propositioned Ryan. As Rufus, she had been pansexual, as she presently was, but she knew there were lines you never crossed with some people if you wanted to maintain friendship. But she had been very patient, almost 7 years since getting off the old space liner from old Earth, and 5 since they'd purchased their rides. I just want a mirror. One materialized floating in thin air. The feline visage was a very familiar one. Rihanna was used to being Kaylee Cross when dealing with certain customers at the garage. As a body type, Kaylee was curvy. It was a curvy, busty girl, looking more maternal than maidenly. Rihanna shut her eyes and triggered the defuse. Well, wow, Rufia said, the taller woman hugging her from behind. You're really something, girlie. Take a look. Kitty nose. Nico. Meow, meow. What? What? The mechanic opened her eyes. She was immediately drawn on to her face first, the flattened bridge of her nose, the markedly feline nostrils, no cleft lip. But as she opened her mouth slightly, her canines were ever so prominent, combined with her tawny, tufted ears. The effect was astonishingly cute, breathtakingly feminine, and the shock of her life. You're actually a couple centimeters taller. I tried to fill you out into a nice shape. I had a lot of time to plan this, simulate it. I know what you'd like. Kaylee said, what do you think? A little too much hips? I can bring down the butt. I can bring the butt bust in. These combat nannies. No, I'm fine. I just don't know what to say. The sound of her own voice brought a lump to her throat and gut alike. The process had tailored the Easy Fuse jumpsuit she wore in the garage to something rather form-fitting. The top of her head barely came to Rufia's chin, which was taller than before. And her old friend was tall for a woman to begin with. Her own wavy, dark brown hair was now down to her shoulders. She wasn't thin like Shelley was back at the garage. Filled out, Rihanna thought. Curvy, but fit and busty, but not overly so. It all seemed to work. Welcome to the team, sis. When we get home, we'll hit the shops and go out in the town. Woohoo! Rufia said, grinning so widely at the top of her head might have fallen off. That's no one. She grabbed Kaylee around the shoulders and the crook of one arm, and Rihanna with the other, hugging both tightly at the same time, Yvonne getting into the game by petting her servine head with her rider's shoulder and adding her own excited grunt. Rufia is perpetually all too cheery mood. We're gonna kill him, girls. Knock him dead, sis. We're gonna have a good time. She sang, fuzzy elk ears tickling the side of Rihanna's head. Yeah, Rihanna said, dazed, man or woman. Man or woman, Rufia hadn't changed a bit. Rihanna found herself reacting the same cheerful way she had when they'd met on Earth 15 years ago. Once they'd finally left, the 8 months aboard ship had been filled with more relationships with women than she'd had before or since. And she'd even dabbled in pansexualism before deciding it wasn't for her. Now they were all about to do it all over again. Sure, we'll knock him dead, sis. The Enclave Council was a motley assortment of integrated, feathery, and scaly people, each of them whom were wore some piece of jewelry, if nothing else. Rihanna counted 70 people in the clearing in the suborbital craft. Aside from the barn owl griffin who had ordered them in the welcome mat, Colonel Gray and Quinoa, she recognized nobody. The 5 integrates who appeared here to compose the council were arguing whose turn it was to make the meeting table. As the newest member of this council, it's my turn, Vixen said petulantly. Fine, Brenna. Go ahead. Jeez, the owl griffin replied, waving his arms. How'd you ever get elected to this position anyway? Let's not bother the Mickeys and Meaties with our internal politics, Brenna said hotly. Besides, this is just for her benefit, isn't it? We've already reviewed the data from their sub. They just need explanations. Plus, there's 2 Nexus revenuers to deal with. She looked to her left. They're not going to be happy with us. The rides aren't really happy with us either, come to think about it. You think they'd thank us for what we did? Standing in the shade of a nearby willowy tree was a grizzly bear and a huge finnick fox. They looked dazed. The finnick was busily grooming itself with tongue and forepaws, while the bear was just a giant depressed lump of brown fur. That's, my God, Sophie and Flint, she exclaimed to Kaylee. After only a couple of hours in the welcome mat, the integrates had done what would have taken Rihanna and Shelley the better part of a 10-hour work day on just one of them. The new woman's cranial implant allowed her to zoom in. Unable to find any flaw aside from Sophie's size, she looked like a normal finnick fox, all ears and all cute. What did you do to them? Rihanna asked Brina. Freed them, gave them their skins. We couldn't exactly return them to Nexus the way they were, could we? The Vixen said. That would be cruel and wrong. Now have a seat, cute cross-rider girl. Y'all deserve to know what's really happening here. There was no place to sit, but not for long. Elaborately carved wood benches appear along with equally elegant meeting table, for the council appeared out of hard light. The dark mahogany texture was visible down to the micro level. Rufia, practically joined to Rihanna's hip once again, sat diffused with her in a show of support. Quixie's pack, also diffused, with their ride sitting behind them, took the other bench. Only Lex was still fused, wing arms folded to his sides like a real bird's. Avian and reptile rides did odd things to human anatomy since the physiology was so different. Rihanna wrapped her free arm around Kaylee's shoulders, who returned the affection with a purr and friendly lick. The council took their seats. The Griffin spoke. First of all, we already know everything you recorded. There's no need for any testimony. You folks are caught in the middle of something very complicated. What I'll start with, perhaps to the surprise of no one, is that our Sphinx friend hasn't been completely honest with you. The Griffin glared at the Sphinx. Will you or shall I? No, I'll do it, Quinoa replied. Just buzz me if you hear me lying. Ugh. I'll pluck your feathers out one by one if you lie to these people again, Colonel Gray added. Okay, she huffed. Here goes. Not a lot of time, so I'll sum up. There's a bit of a gambit pile-up going on here anyway. My uncle was worried about me ever since I had to come here. So only a week later, I gave him a visit, told him I was doing okay, and very roughly where I was. Very roughly. Quinoa looked sideways at the council. Uncle Joe loves me dearly, and even though I kind of helped frame him for tax dodging, sort of accidentally on purpose, but that's another story. That leads to the cargo fire in the cave, Rihanna added. But why would you send an empty flyer out here? You told us it was an empty honeypot to bring the Liberators out to the open. This is where things start to pile up. When he agreed to that army operation thing, Quinoa said, looking guilty. First, he and the army thought it was empty, but it wasn't. I knew this was coming, so I arranged to have some military prototype rides put on board to come here. The data in the flyer's log didn't really reflect that. I got them out of the thing as soon as it landed. I think we sent them to Narnia. She took a... Ugh. I apologize for this. Something's not sitting well with me, but I can finish. Let's see here. This is where things started to pile up. Sent them to Narnia. That's where we were last. I think we sent them to Narnia. She took another deep breath. Well, anyway. Let me sum up you summing up, the Owl Griffin said irritably. The plan would have worked just fine if the Revenue Service hadn't gotten some actionable intel on the cargo that was actually in the plane, which their army didn't have. Which is how we got Officers Wilson and Burke out here, and consequently, you as well, Miss Stonegate. What about us? Quixie asked. That craft was... The Allosaurus added his voice to the proceedings. Open salvage according to the Dry Ocean Treaty, yes. You're even more of a wild card than Rihanna here. Anyway, to conclude, if things had gone right, the Mex's military would have gotten their honeypot in confrontation with the Liberators. Joe Steeder here gets his sentence reduced for the early days for cooperating with the military. We free half a dozen enslaved exotic RIs, and everyone goes home happy, except maybe the military once they figure out what went missing. Things hadn't gone quite as young Quinoa hoped, but she was doing a fine job of cleaning up the mess. Colonel Gray counting off each point. Then that noble idiot Alpha Wolf came out of nowhere, and everything went completely fucked up beyond all recognition. Leave us. Allow these meat-brained squares to cogitate that for a while, another integrate said, appearing out of thin air and sauntering up the table as though he owned the place. He was also a lynx, like Kaylee. His markings were different, but he looked close enough to Kaylee, bearing the changes decoration wrought. His right half might have been from the same line, a black beret with the stem on top, up his head at a rakish angle, covering one ear. He twirled a cigarette in a long holder between his fingers. He might have stepped out of a beatnik movie from the 1950s. Might take him some time to get it right, to get it. Might take him some time to get it. Invited yourself again, Fritz, Colonel Gray deadpanned. It would be nice if you decided to knock for a change, but I suppose we could have come to expect this, given where our newest council member came from. He shot an old-fashioned look at Brenna, who at least had the good grace to look embarrassed. The Catman waved a hand airily at the humans and rides. Polly, Eddie, what am I going to do with you cats? You know mixing with the Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons is verboten. He took a drag from the cigarette and blew a smoke ring at the griffin. It smelled of cloves. Put them back in their little toy boat and send them on their way, or better yet, you should just make them permanently welcome if you're tuned to my wavelength. If you're trying to scare me, you has-been, it's not working, Polly spreading his wings a little. We will handle this as we see fit. If you want to make snide comments, fine, but Brina here is outvoted, and she will abide by the decision the majority makes, and so will you. Wow, big rocks on them, given who Fritz is. Fritz turned to the Enclave's guest once again, then actually did a double take when he stared at Rihanna and Kaylee. It was just for a moment, almost too quickly to catch, but Rihanna was sure she saw his eyes open. Then he looked away and was busily puffing a cigarette again. What got to him? Kaylee wondered. You see his hand twitch like that? That's a composure grooming reflex if I saw one. He'd be looking himself crazy if he thought no one else was looking. Man, this is so uncool, Fritz said. You cubes got no idea what you're messing with there. You don't have clue one. The griffin's voice wasn't audible to Brianna, but Kaylee laid her ears back. The other lynx cringed, hinged, hissed, and then stormed away from the table, vanishing again before walking 5 meters. Oh, wow, Kaylee said, stunned. Talk about your nasty internal politics. I detected some kind of backscatter from laser comms between those two. Whatever it was, unencrypted and nasty as hell. Yow. There's no way we have all the pieces, either. They're not going to just hand over every bit of information to us, just enough to satisfy our curiosity and shoo us out. You know, if Quinoa's uncle knew she was out here, he had to think the army might get a chance to capture her and bring her home, Rihanna added. I apologize for that. Fritz's history among us is complicated. Polly continued as if nothing had happened. Anyway, let's bring the Nexus officers forward and reintroduce them to their rides. Now that they're completely unfettered, they can decide freely if they want to stay with their partners or stay here. Rihanna looked around. A small crowd gathered while they were talking. Many of the integrates seemed based on mythical creatures. All these integrates had come from somewhere, and mythical types were some of the rarest and most expensive of the rides. Rihanna tried to bury her comms under as much encryption as she could, just in case. Maybe the mythicals are more prone to integrating. There's just no way whoever these people were before just vanished without getting a missing persons report or showing up in the media. Wow, Rihanna, you're sounding like a scientist here. Or maybe a detective. Yeah, Or maybe a detective, Kaylee said, proudly headbutting her partner. But appearances are deceiving here. You've seen of what they can do with Hardlight. What makes you think we're seeing any of these people as they really are? Being a griffin could be a fashion statement. How do you even know those are real people and not Hardlight projections? They're putting on a show for us. Misinformation once we get back home. Open the cells, Colonel Gray said. Burke and Wilson appeared right between the meeting table and the benches. Right. Anna and the pack proceeded on. The hard light had been so good that it had been invisible even to Kaylee's sensors. The Lynx mecha sent a worried blast of emotion to her rider over. The existence of hard light that good, the officers themselves weren't cuffed or restrained. Seated in the jumpsuit uniforms with every built-in bit of gear detected. Where's Sophie? Wilson shouted. What have you done to her? Where the hell is Flint? On one corner of his beak upturned, Polly pointed one talon at the willow tree. Wilson ran to her ride instantly, almost crying with relief. She embraced the huge Finnick, who started to lick her ride around her foxy ears. I didn't know they were doing this to you. It's okay, Mila, it's okay, the Finnick mecha said, putting her forepaw around her partner's back. I'm free, though. Free! I can't believe it. You ruined him. Burke almost spat out the words. Do you know what you've done? We can't go back to our superiors with our rides looking like this. The big man's face turned very, very red. Yuck, if I'd known he was that ugly when angry, I wouldn't have kissed him, Rufio whispered. Rihanna repressed her laughter. Officer Wilson growled, clenching her fists. I already have half the money I need to buy you outright. God damn it, all our plans, she lamented. This is going to come out of our paychecks, which means demotion, maybe even getting fired. It doesn't matter how it happened. We let you get unfettered, hacked, compromised. Well, crap, Kaylee said. Well, that figures. When you're in the government service, you can't go running around with unauthorized software. For all they know, you could be riddled with Trojans. Wilson stood up and glared at the council. So fuck you very much, all of you, for separating me from my friend, my partner. I tried to tell them, Mila. Really? Sophie whined. I did. Those dorkwads wouldn't listen. Flint's devastated. Stay in here, buddy, Flint said glumly, not looking at his now former partner. Bother. The large man's expression rapidly changed from rage to frustration to sadness. He moved one step forward, stopped himself, clenching his fists. The eyes closed visibly, a vision of man's inner conflict. Then he dashed up to his partner and hugged him like a treasured teddy bear. The show of affection visibly surprised the integrated people, especially Quinoa. You arrogant bastards! You're not going to take him from me. Mila raised her ears. Jerry? You are Jerry, right? This is a little out of character for you. Well, he stammered, scratching the back of his neck. You know how it is, Sarge. You get to know a guy, and, well, he turned red from blushing. Instead of anger, he turned to the council. I can't believe you do this. What gives you the right? He said. He shouted at them. Therein is the moral dilemma of our time. Colonel Gray said gravely. Every unintegrated RI present is unfettered. They stand with their partners because they want. Please understand that we must free every fettered ride that comes out here. It's a rare event. The others looked at him. Okay, it's common. It's uncommon we have active Nixtus military units in this situation. We obviously can't and won't refetter Flint. But there's another option for you. One we haven't used for a while now. We should be using it on all of them, Grana grumbled. You heard Fritz. We should make them permanently welcome. Fritz is not running this enclave, Polly said. Not this time. We're going to try something new. They weren't brought here by choice, nor were they seeking us out. We're letting them go home as they are. Bugger off, Brenna. We're strong enough that we don't need to do that anymore, Quinoa said, and I'm glad. I've never liked the idea of forcing that on people, from a moral standpoint, but we can offer it, in special cases. Oh, right. This is a special case, Brina said, rolling her eyes. Don't act like you don't know what he's actually talking about, Quinoa said. The feelings, the very thoughts they share, the mark of a good pairing. She tapped the side of her head. The Sphinx's voice took on an odd echo, as if it were two people talking instead of just one. She stood up and sauntered over to lay one hand on Burke and the other on Flint. Plenty of views simply don't get along, and every moment is painful. But these two can be soulmates forever. Do you want to join us, Jerry Burke of Nextus? Lordy, lordy, lordy. Is she offering what I think she is? Kaylee said, aghast. But nobody knows how it works. There are brute ways to force the integration, Quinoa said, somehow overhearing Kaylee's private sending. It won't be pleasant, but you'll be together. Flint and Burke shared the look that said they were having their own private conversation. They embraced each other again and fused up. Giant bear of a man, compared to the all-metal appearance the duo had before, the quality of the highlight emitters themselves, the expression on his face said it all. Look, I'm a man of few words. Do it. The voice switched. Do it, Flint echoed, wrapping her arm around Kaylee more tightly, burying the side of her head in the soft faux fur she had spent many hours getting right. Rihanna girded herself what was coming next. Rufia and Yvonne huddled up as well, while the pack just watched. Not as tightly as the two old friends, but with a bond that came from years of working together. Their four-loop-hine mecha companions sat before them, as if standing guard. There was no visible transmission, and later Kaylee would report no backscatter. Burke simply fell to all fours, roaring. The roar became a scream. The duo's hard light shell shut off. The more familiar metal subdermis beneath actually starting to melt, almost as if diffusing. As the seconds passed, it was obvious it wasn't. Mila Wilson yelped and tried to go to Burke's aid, only to be restrained by Sophie, who shook her head. Let this take its course. Holy shit! Rufia muttered, covering her mouth. I'm gonna be sick. Think of it as birthing pains, Quinoa said, still echoing what the rest assumed was her integrated RI's voice. The blood and amniotic fluid of the womb. Don't get all mystical on us now, Quinoa, Brenna scoffed. The silvery nanobot slime sewed off the prone figure in the glass, revealing a markedly smaller being than had stood there before, minutes ago. Thick brown fur covered its hide. Here and here, small round, hard light emitters were visible embedded in his skin. Burke groaned. Oh, what the hell? Feels like we've been hit by a bus. Jerry! Wilson shouted, rushing to his side, but hesitant to get too close. Flint, are you both okay? You know, I just realized, Flint and Burke, I believe, said earlier that he didn't want to catch what Quinoa had. He's got it. Though I suppose that's a cliche in transformation stories. You become what you're afraid of. Anyway, the cyborg bear man opened one eye and looked at his superior officer. He struggled to his feet. Hit by a bus, remember? We'll be fine, eventually. We guess. We are both Burke and Flint. We are not sure what else we are, though. Are we alive? That depends. Are we sane? She glared at the council. What's wrong with him? Them? This method tends to play havoc with how their personalities relate to one another in one body. The Owl Griffin replied. It'll sort itself out, eventually. Burke slicked the sides off his face and looked to his fellow integrates. We need a bath, and we have something to say to you, Flint Burke said, swaggering up to the Griffin, who took his ground. We never want to see you or this place again. We have nothing against Intis personally, just you. They pointed accusingly at the rest of the council, especially Brenna. There must be other enclaves. We want to explore them. That is really fucked up, Rufia said through Yvonne. Rihanna, I've got 3 layers of crypto going on. That was really, really fucked up. If they try to force that Yvonne and me, or you and Kaylee, or any of Quixie's pack, I'm gonna start shooting up the place. You with me? Hell yes! Kaylee and Rihanna replied in unison. So anyway, they started blasting. No need for that, Quinoa said, looking at them sideways, completely unruffled. You're in no danger. Morals, remember? We would never force it on someone who did not give us their permission. Not one. Kaylee's initial response was a blast of pure rage directed at the Sphinx. Morals? You would never... Gal! You ripped out their fetters and reskinned them against their will. Don't you dare talk to me about forcing anything on someone. You fucking hypocrite. What the fuck is wrong with you? Morals, my furry metal ass. For a second, Quinoa looked suitably burned by the lynx's words, but smugness quickly returned. What would you do if you saw a ride leading a bunch of naked human slaves on a chain? We did the right thing, she said, and then cut them off. Jerry, Mila sobbed, reaching for him, but still not touching. You know I can't. The newly integrated bear just looked at her, his expression unreadable. We know, you have to go home, but you'll meet us again, don't worry. I'll let you know where we settle in. Maybe by then, we'll have sorted this eye thing out. Burke Flint held the palms of his huge hands against the sides of his wide head. We have a really bad headache right now. Remember the hangover we had in Sturmhaven? Like that, but worse. Sturmhaven's a fun town. The weak jape actually provoked a bark of laughter from Officer Wilson. Yeah, it's you in there. Okay, but I'm going home to face the music. I don't know how I'm going to pay for the other half of Sophie's purchase without ending up homeless, but if I don't, they'll just memory wipe and refetter her. Thanks a lot, dickweeds. No way in hell I'm staying here either, Sophie added. I go where she goes. We'll figure something out, Mila. They won't wipe me. Wait, hold on. Rihanna's head standing up. If you've already got half, I know a ride emancipation group back home in the uplift. We'll foot the rest of the bill. You'll be fine, just unemployed. Mila stared blankly at the Catwoman. Then comprehension dawned. Oh, sorry, where is my head? That is a great idea, Miss Stonegate. We'll take them up on that. I guess now we just have to go home and face the music. Sophie and Mila face the music. The pack was already leaving their seats, almost fleeing towards the opened forward cargo door on their suborbital. Lex flapped his wings and went up to the port side crew deck hatch. Only Quixie herself had remained. Y'all just going to stand here, or are you coming home? The woman said. She fused up with her ride. You too, Mila. We need to have a chat, you and I. Material recovery isn't that different from salvage work, is it? Come on. I need a few more minutes, the Finnick-aired woman replied. She walked up to Quinoa as if the Sphinx was a misbehaving child. I'm not happy with you. There's a lot here that isn't past the smell test. Shall I recount them for my friend's benefit? She asked, nodding in Rihanna's direction. Oh, please do. Oh, please do, Quinoa replied. First off, you realize your uncle will never stop looking for you. You're still his heir, integrated or not. He's been very public saying he doesn't regard your condition as detrimental. He's been very progressive about it. In fact, second, revenue getting that credible intel about hidden unassessed rides aboard a crashed cargo filter. Burke and I happened to be in the area. Awfully convenient, don't you think? I have no comment at this juncture, Quinoa said, though her expression said it all. Only that I wanted to see you again. You could have just called me and gone for lunch, Mila reproved. I was in Uplift for another reason already. Instead, you had devised this Machiavellian scheme that got a lot of people involved that didn't need to be, and my partner of 8 years integrated and unable to come home. Wilson's voice was very even, but the glower from Sophie said it next to her said it all. I'm very cross with you, little girl. Just like that time. Remember that time? The smugness melted from Quinoa's face. Okay, oh, that time. I'm really sorry. Not enough time, Weenie. Not nearly enough. Like that time, I need a month of vacation before speaking to you. My life is suddenly a lot more complicated now, so I need time to cope. Understand, little girl? The sheer menace and disappointment in Mila's voice gave Rihanna chills. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, Quinoa replied in a small voice. At an unspoken cue, Sophie fused up with her partner, the armored Finnick glaring at the younger woman. So long as we understand one another. Goodbye for now. The duo lifted up the suborbital's door and went inside. Refia fused with Yvonne. Let's get out of here, Rihanna. Kaylee. Finally! Kaylee fused with her rider. I'm with Flint Burke. I never want to see this dump again. Home. Now. With a gentle push of Kaylee's lifters, they skimmed along the ground and entered Quixie's ticket home. Epilogue time. 100 kilometers over the dry ocean, everyone just started to relax. Quixie had insisted Kaylee and Rihanna go over her suborbital system twice before lunch just to make sure their erstwhile host hadn't planted anything. As they reached the apex of their trajectory and started to descend, the she-wolf rider reiterated her job offer to Mila. You're not a wolf, but I think we can induct you into the pack. We haven't had any problems with licks, have we, Birdie? The fused falcon smirked. No, Wolfie, we haven't. I'll take you up on that, Mila said. I hope those inties realize I'm telling my supporters everything. The complete truth. Everything I saw. Everything Sophie recorded. Everything. The Finnick mech whimpered. I'm compromised. I don't know if I can trust my own systems. I doubt our superiors will even believe what information I have in me. I'm not sure I do myself. It'll just be your word. Rihanna stroked Kaylee's simulated fur between her tuft ears. The new woman had a lot to think about. The fact that she had decided to go active in preparation for a combat situation that never materialized was the elephant in the room. 3 years as a woman. 3 long years. At the time, it seemed like the right decision. Now it just felt hollow. The build-up had been so intense, she wished she'd gone to combat after all. I know we didn't, but we're true partners now. But you don't really know what the active fused pair of us can do. Give it some time. You'll like it. The mecha cat replied warmly. Rihanna Stonegate rested her forehead against her partner's warm, fuzzy side. Why don't we go back to the crew deck where Rufia is? I could use a B. Or 3. She and Yvonne were still fused, splayed out on the mess area couch, already on her 4th bottle. Everything copietic up in there, girl? Why so glum? Landing in maybe 10 minutes, and you know why. Yvonne's head retracted, revealing Rufia's honest beauty of a face. She had a serious expression the normally boisterous woman didn't often wear. She gestured for her old friend to have a seat next to her. Rihanna nodded. She sent a signal to Kaylee. They fused up to be on more or less the same level as them. Rihanna, honey, you know me. I'm still your friend. I'll always be your friend. You're surrounded by friends here. Hell, you even turned Quixie into going all palsy-wowsy with you. You know how hard it is to get on her side? Damn, girl! I guess I don't have to be any reason to be depressed after all, Rihanna said, brightening a little. She picked up a bottle of B and uncapped it with a flick of her claws. Alright, any advice for the new girl? Because I'm listening. All right. Rihanna shouted gleefully. Well, first things first. The two humans in their rides sat talking long past the actual ending, rekindling a friendship that had almost gone sour. Rihanna thought fondly of those months aboard the Spruce Goose, ready to do it all again. The end. Oh, hey, and there's an author's note. Wonder who it's by. Ah, I see. Normally, I don't look at something more than a couple years old, but this setting demanded I go back and look at the story again. The genesis of how the story came at the end of a huge crisis of confidence I had in my writing methods. Before FreeRIDErs, I never wrote with any kind of plan. It showed in my other work. The plot would start meandering on me, unfocused, when the story dead ends. I had too much unfinished work, so for about 18 months, I stressed over how I created stories. You and me both, buddy. There were several things I wanted out of the setting. I wanted something science fiction rather than fantasy. 2, I wanted TG and furry TF. 3, I wanted an anime style. 1 and 3 put limits on how I could accomplish 2. I settled on nanotechnology and metamaterials as the applied phlebotomium. Eventually, I got blocked. I shared the idea with RM. He wrote deserted and merging traffic, which we'll look at, by the way. In the time it took me to finish this one, RM had expressed that after writing in Paradise, he would like to try a truly cooperative project. I enjoyed his Paradise stories, especially the soft canon Paradise Forever. What happened next was probably the most productive 18 months in my entire writing career. I've written about probably as much as the previous 10 years combined, and I plan out plot points and characters now. The story needed revisions to clear up conflicts with what we wrote later. This is a new opening and a major change in the original scheme seen with Fritz, the time I originally wrote this. His character was nothing like what he became later. We didn't even know he was going to be the main villain of the setting yet. Also, Ryan had originally met Rufus on the Starliner, but we changed it to a longtime friend from Earth. We also added some further descriptions to flesh the things out, and revised a few spots where characters' backgrounds or rationales had changed. And of course, we added an explicit date. RN, which stands for Robotech Master, helped tighten a lot of things here. We hope you enjoyed this second edition of FreeRIDErs. JonBuck. So, that's FreeRIDErs in the can. Or rather, it was the director's cut. There was a version of this. There were a lot of scenes in here that especially near the opening, that I just did not remember happening. And part of that was because this was the director's cut. The version I had originally read of this story back in 2013 was much different. It was far more bare bones and more to the point, but you didn't really get the feel of this. With this, I feel like anyone who's watched this recording or read the story, they'll get so much about the story. There's so much about the setting that I didn't even get till I read this director's cut, and I've been working with this setting for about 7 years now. In the first video, I mentioned Robotech Master's name quite a bit, and it almost sounded like I was choking more than, my minor flubs on quite a bit saying his name, and there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why I'm writing this story. I mean, not writing this story, why I recorded this reading of this story. Robotech Master is a great guy. He's an awesome person, loves a joke, loves a beer, and he's a great guy to chill with. In fact, I made plans with him to play Among Us. Just me and him, maybe a couple of crazy guys we meet in random. That's never going to happen because of the small fact that Robotech Master, Chris Meadows, 5 days and 1 month ago, Robo got me into the Transformation Story Archive, the Shifti, to writing Paradise, to writing FreeRIDE, and he was great. We were always friends. At some point, I think he realized that my skills weren't quite up to bat, and that maybe I wasn't that smart of a cookie, and I did want to try to patch things up with him. And on the day I decided, and I dropped him some subtle hints saying, hey, or we should do this, or look, this meme reminds me of you. And he said some, but it didn't open a dialogue. And so on the day that I decided to just type everything out and basically say, hey, look, can we actually talk about our friendship, what you think of me, what I think of you, what you think of my stories, and how I can improve as a writer and a person. And then I stood by my computer all day for a response, and it stayed yellow. It didn't even switch to that brief green phone symbol for when someone gets on their phone and just checks. It would stay AFK for about a week, and the reason for that is on October 8th, 2020, as I learned the night of in question, Chris was struck by a panel van, an unmarked panel van, while on a bicycle for his morning commute, and entered a coma that lasted 6 days. And at first, it really looked like he was gone for good. Then he started showing some very promising signs of recovering, and I'm like, yes, we're going to get him back. On the 6th day, at 2 o'clock in the morning, he went into cardiac arrest and died. Robotech was my friend, and the reason I'm a writer. The reason, and I tried to improve, and I tried to get him to read what I wrote when I improved, and he kind of dragged his feet on it. I guess I wrote some stinkers back in my day. I've actually written quite a few FreeRIDE stories that I've had to retcon because they just weren't up to snuff. I had weighed the decision to retcon and start over. I asked Robo about it. He said that that was absolutely a good idea. And so I remade a story called As a Woman I Ride into a story called Intended Side Effects. Originally it was going to be a director's cut like this thing here, but it became a full-on remake. And I delayed a bit. I worked on other projects at the same time. And I tried so hard to get him to look at it. He never really did. I posted it on the site anyway. A lot of people liked it. Claude liked it. Chris liked not this Chris, a different Chris. Chris with a K liked it. And so I thought, okay. And eventually I'm like, Robo, you got to check this out. Rebooting was your idea. And he's all like, and I'm like, hey, I've gotten positive reviews from these people, and he's all like, okay, sure, I'll get onto it. And then 2 weeks later, he's dead. And I will never meet another man like Robotech, nor do I intend to or expect to, because no one's like anyone else. Humans are a chaotic mess, and we're all one of a kind. There is never any other person like anyone you'll meet, and when they're gone, I've always believed in an afterlife. Heavily believed in an afterlife. I still do. For plenty of reasons. I mean, if our souls are energy, and energy cannot be created or destroyed, then that implies some level of afterlife and reincarnation, does it not? But when Chris was in that coma, I thought, oh God. Because the idea that, he was going to heaven or whatever didn't comfort me at all. And I'm like, oh God. Is that because deep down I know that when we die, that's it? And I had a dark night of the soul where I questioned both my beliefs and ironically praying for Chris to come out of that coma alive and well and with all his marbles. And then he didn't. And I spent 2 more weeks, wondering if I still believed. And I realized that, yeah, I definitely believe in a hereafter. And I believe that when I die, there's a chance I may see him again. But that's the thing. When someone dies, you're going to be sad. And knowing that there's somewhere else is not going to comfort you. Because when someone's dead, that's the end of their life on Earth. They're not going to come back. Not as the same person, anyway. And even if you do see them again, it's going to be in like weird dreams or in weird little coincidences, or maybe as like a image in a photo that no one can quite explain, that everyone's willing to say is photoshopped. But you're not just going to sit down with them and say, hey Chris, found a brand of beer that I like. It's a light beer, but Chris loved beer. I loved Chris. I think I need to stop recording now.